Welcome to tonight's webinar on outdoor water conservation. This webinar is being offered through the Fairfax County HomeWise program as a part of the HomeWise virtual series. Tonight's webinar will be led by Mike and Peter, who are volunteers that were trained as a part of the HomeWise program. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, please submit them through the question portal on your screen. We will have time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Kendra. So to recap, the Fairfax County HomeWise program educates, empowers, and enables residents to make changes that reduce energy use, water use, and associated costs in their homes. Volunteers, such as myself, assist low and moderate income residents with physical improvements to their homes, and provide support for behavior changes that are proven to conserve resources and money. So I want to talk about what we're going to be presenting tonight. So our agenda consists of why water conservation matters. So that's factors that stress water supply and outdoor water use. Then Peter will be discussing outdoor watering methods, which include sprinkler systems, irrigation, and rain barrels. And then I will come back to talk about methods to conserve water, which includes native plants, hydrozones, limiting turf grass, as well as mulch. And then at the end, we'll open it up to some Q&A. So, good question. Why should I conserve water? Because water is a limited supply. There's about 1% of all of Earth's water is fresh water, and out of that, only 0.007% is actually accessible for us to drink and shower with. According to the EPA, by 2024, 40 of our 50 states are anticipating water shortages, and that does include Virginia as well. And also, it can save you a significant amount of money on your water bills. And so let's go over some of the factors that stress water supply. So typically, the average American family uses about 300 gallons of water per day. So there is an increase in water demand as the population rises. And plus, there is a water shortage as well with climate change effects. So the supply is decreasing and the demand is increasing, right? There are other commercial practices as well that affect the water usage, such as inefficient agricultural and landscape water practices, water for energy generation, as well as water pollution and groundwater depletion. Additionally, there's a diversion and degradation of natural waterways and over-extraction and exports for such things as beverages and shipping of water to like other countries. What we're going to focus on really is that bottom right icon, which is how to reduce our wasteful water habits. So again, the average American family uses about 300 gallons of water. Approximately 30 to 70% of that is for our residential water use and outdoor landscaping. The water for the outdoor landscaping in the summer can exceed all of the water use for the entire year, and 50% of our landscaping water is reduced due to evaporation, wind, or overwatering. Now, if we take that figure of 300 gallons of water per day for a family, 30% of that is used for our outdoor lawns. That's about 100 gallons for a family per day, and if 50% of that is wasted, that's 45 to 50 gallons of water that's wasted every day. So that's a pretty big number. So we're going to talk about some strategies to reduce that and use water more efficiently. And the average suburban lawn is given about 10,000 extra gallons of residential water each year. So that's a lot.
Okay, hi, thanks Mike very much. I'm Peter. I'm going to talk about outdoor watering systems. In particular, we're going to touch on how that vast amount of water is used for outdoor irrigation systems to maintain people's lawns. If you have a large lawn, you probably have some sort of sprinkler system. You have a small lawn, maybe you just use a hose or don't water at all, but we'll address some of that as well. If used improperly, sprinklers can waste a vast amount of water. A few ways to think about this. The analogy I came up with is if you're very thirsty, you probably want to drink water. Would you prefer a 12-ounce glass of water that you can hold and drink, or would you like me to dump a gallon of water in your head? Probably the former, because what we're doing right now is trying to increase the efficiency, because to water your plants, the water has to get to the roots. That's where the water is absorbed. And things that inhibit that process are where the water is wasted. We'll talk about inspecting your sprinkler system on the next slide. But things you can do is set your sprinkler system, or if you're actively watering with a hose, do that early in the morning or late in the evening. If it's very hot outside, the sun is shining, that's going to evaporate a lot of the water before it actually hits the root system, and a lot of that water just goes away. It isn't used at all. It's dumped on your head. Similarly, turn off your sprinklers rather on a windy day, because if the water is being blown away from the plants into your neighbor's yard, their lawn looks great, yours not so much, or it's probably more likely on the asphalt, when then it just runs into the gutter and is not being applied to the plants, which is part of that waste process we have. Third on this slide, we have install a rain sensor. Those are available at your local home goods stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, the internet, and they can turn off your sprinkler if it's raining. I have fond memories of, there was in a town, it was flooding. I looked over and the city building had a sprinkler on while we were under a flood watch. It was incredible to me. This was years ago in a different state, not Fairfax County, but rain sensor, they started around $20 or so. And if you use it over a period of years, will probably pay for itself in terms of water saved. So that is another option you can for your sprinkler systems. Now, inspecting your sprinkler systems. Here's an infographic with some disturbing values, where if you have an improperly installed sprinkler system, or you have some damage to it, where wear and tear has caused a leak, you can lose vast amounts of water. You should inspect your sprinkler heads. You can see over on the left side, the broken one can waste 25,000 gallons of water in 6 months, which is just a difficult number to picture in your head, but it's a lot of water. If the hoses and pipes aren't connected well, you can waste a small pinhole can waste up to 6,300 gallons of water per month, which is again just a vast amount of water system. We have a point about installing a rain sensor, which I mentioned on the previous slide, and over on the left side, make sure that you are actively watering what you want to water. If you're just pouring water onto the pavement, again, that's just a lot of water that goes directly into the sewage systems and does not help keep your lawn great. It's about increasing the efficiency of the water you do put to your lawn, so it looks the way you want. Another thing you could try to set up is a micro irrigation system. This form of irrigation delivers water directly to the plant roots through a series of tubes placed on the surface or below the surface. It uses a low flow rate, which can reduce runoff. I'm sure you've seen other people water their lawns and you just see this gushing water flowing down their lawn into the sidewalk. By using a lower flow rate, you give the water more opportunity to be absorbed into the soil to get to the roots where the plants can actually drink it. Little glass, not a gallon on your head. The targeted delivery of the water to specific plants can save significant amount of water, and according to the EPA, a micro irrigation system can use 20 to 50% less water than traditional sprinkler systems. And if you do the math on if 70% of your bill is outside irrigation and you reduce that by half, that's just a ton of money back in your pocket. Things to think about, like we mentioned, weather conditions. Don't do it when it's really sunny out. Don't do it when it's really windy out. That's going to push the water away from the roots and into anywhere else. We'll talk about planting hydrozones a little later. Mike will talk about that. Where you locate your sprinklers is important. What kind of soil you're doing it on. If it's, don't water rock. That's important. What time of year it is, again, during the summer, especially when it's really, really hot outside, you don't want to water in the middle of the day because the sun will just evaporate it. And if your plants aren't growing as much in the winter, you probably don't want to cover it right before it freezes as well. And if your plants are already dead, consider the plant condition, because you don't want to, why are you watering the dead plants? You probably should have done this a week ago. Something to consider as you plan and irrigate and water your lawn and take care of it so it can serve your family as best it can. Last thing we can consider is saving water, collecting it from other resources. Rain barrels can be used to collect water that runs off a roof. You can set this up and gather water over time and then use that water to water your plants to keep your, it's like saving the water that would normally just go to the drain and use that to water your lawn. The Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation Districts does host rain barrel workshops. They are booked until the year 2023 through Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation Districts. Look out for new workshops next year, or if you're really anxious to get started, there are lots of tutorials online. You can just search for rain barrel workshop or rain barrel tutorial and make your own. We would like to mention that if you're harvesting water through your rain barrel, you have a garden full of fruits and vegetables that you eat, you probably should not use that water for anything that you might want to consume at a later date. We can't guarantee that the water that's running off your roof is safe for consumption, and better safe than sorry in that regard.
All right, thanks, Peter. So I'm going to go over some additional water saving tips, starting with using native or drought tolerant plants. So one might ask, why would we want to use native or drought tolerant plants? There's a few good reasons. One, so it's in the name, it uses less water. So because drought tolerant plants have adapted to drier climates and have lower water requirements, they naturally use less water. Some characteristics of drought tolerant plants: they have deeper roots than some other plants. They have less surface area, so there's less evaporation that's coming off of the leaves. So a thin, like evergreen type needle, right, is less surface area than a broadleaf plant. And then also some wax, like some plants actually have wax covering over the leaves that reduces the water that evaporates. So these plants are specially designed to kind of store up that water or seek additional water resources out. Native plants are not necessarily drought tolerant, although once they're established, they require a minimal supply supplemental irrigation. So point number one, less water, right? Point number two, lower maintenance. So not only can you look forward to using less water with native plants, but because these plants have adapted to their environment, you can spend less time fertilizing, pruning, and caring for them in general. And I know I like to get my weekend time back. And third, native plants are beautiful. Maybe that's, I'm just biased about that, but they have appealing foliage. There's flowers and berries that you can make to, make your landscape unique, attractive and welcoming, not only for people, but also for local wildlife as well. Now that's great, okay, so maybe we've convinced you that you want to use native plants. The question you might be having is, well, where do I start? What native plants do we even look at, right? So the Plant Nova Natives has a guidebook that is extremely useful for understanding how you might choose native plants to plant in your own yard. They break it up into a couple of different categories. So the categories are forbs, which are really small, non-woody flowering plants, or you might know them as perennials. They have types of grasses to include sedges and rushes. This guidebook also shows the categories for ferns, vines, shrubs, and trees. In addition, it tells you the different requirements that might be necessary for each of these types of plants, to include the height or the maturity at full size, the sun requirements, the moisture requirements, which is paramount to this discussion, and it's also what types of wildlife it might attract. So maybe you want a yard full of butterflies. Well, you can plant some butterfly weeds and get a nice view of butterflies throughout the summertime. Butterflies, birds, pollinators, things like that. In addition, my favorite part of the book is at the end, they have the bloom time for each of these different native plants, and they show the bloom times throughout the summer. So if you want, so my plants, they all bloom like this month, and then it's just green for the rest of the year, right? I wish I had discovered this guidebook, because then I would plant plants that bloom in the springtime, the summertime, and the fall time, so you have a nice bloom variety throughout the entire, 3 blooming seasons anyway. So go check it out, Plant Nova Natives, awesome guidebook. And additionally, there is the Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District has an annual native seedling sale that they host every spring. It's a hot event. This event sold out in a couple of hours. I've been trying desperately to get my hands on them. So, sign up, get on that newsletter, and make sure that you are there when they release it. But they will be holding it again next year. And there's plenty of local plant sellers as well that host recurring plant sales around the area. So just check those out as well. Okay, so here's a few different types of native plants. As you can tell, they are beautiful. The top row has some of the perennials. So you have the butterfly weed. We discussed that for attracting butterflies. And then the bottom left, you have the cinnamon fern. There's 2 shrubs here in the bottom middle. That's the smooth hydrangea and the Virginia sweetspire, and also one of the trees, the eastern redbud. So just a example of what you could plant in your own yard. All right, and hydrozones. So this is about grouping plants by water needs. Now, why is this important? So let's say that you have 2 plants that you're planting side by side to one another. Let's say one of these plants is a drought-tolerant plant, doesn't need a lot of water, and the plant right next to it maybe needs a lot of water, right? Well, if you have a mix of plants like this and you just water them, either one plant is getting too much water or one plant is getting not enough water. And so that is introducing some sort of water waste somewhere. So what you want to do is you want to group these plants into like needed water needs. So plants that need a lot of water, group them together. Plants that don't need a lot of water, group them together as well. And you can create these hydrozones that have different watering needs. So when you water one area, you can customize how much water you give to an area and ensure that your plants are getting the right amount of water for each of them. There's a number of factors that go in to determining, what might be a high, medium, low zone. Things like, for example, grass, trees, and flowers in an area that get direct sunlight will require more water than those planted in a shady area. Similarly, if materials are planted at the top or the bottom of the slope, irrigation should account for runoff and accumulation. Additionally, turf areas and planting beds have different water needs and should be zoned separately. Trees and shrubs generally need deep watering less frequently, while turf grass needs more frequent watering. And consider planting highest water use oasis type species closest to the house. Your main water supply probably is coming from your house, so if you want to group the high water needs right by where your water is coming from, it makes sense, right? You don't have to run it all the way out to the yard. Limit the turf grass area. Turf grass does require a lot of irrigation and water for general maintenance. A fun fact is that the grass is the #1 most watered crop in the United States, which is that's a lot of water, right, for something that you can't eat, really. So only plant turf grass when it's necessary. Select drought-tolerant turf grass. The one shown in the picture is a zoysia turf grass, so that does require not much maintenance. Zoysia is nice in that it grows slowly, so you don't have to mow it every single week, and it has a habit of staying really green during those summer months. Cut turf grass only when it reaches 2 to 3 inches. Less if you cut it shorter, that's more that can evaporate. It stresses the grass more. It doesn't promote those roots to go quite as deep. So if you can let your grass grow a little bit, it will also save you some water in the long term as much as you need to water it. Less stress. And use mulch, right? So mulch, you can use it around shrubs and plants to really keep that water retained within your plants. Aerating the soil and adding organic matter can also help with the water retention. So, it again reduces water evaporation, limits that weed growth, moderates the soil temperature, and prevents erosion. There's a note of overusing mulch can restrict water flow to plant roots. So how much is enough? You want to look for around 2 to 4 inches of mulch. Okay. And there is also free mulch available at the I-66 transfer station and I-95 landfill complex. So you can go there, load on up, and they also sometimes distribute them to different park areas. Currently, There is also mulch distribution going on at the Bull Run Regional Park in Clifton, the Gristmill Park in Alexandria, and Pine Ridge Park in Annandale. So if any of those locations are closer to you, just swing on by and you can get some free mulch, which is great. More money savings.
Okay, just to reiterate some of the good how to implement some of the good water saving habits is one, definitely avoid watering in the heat of the day. Remember, we want to drink the glass. We don't want the gallon on our head. We want the water to hit the roots. We want the plants to actually drink it. We don't want it to evaporate into the sky and re-enter the water cycle. We want to use the water we put on our lawn or shrubs or flowers instead of it just disappearing into the ether. Second, replace the mulch at least once a year and remove the weeds when necessary. Like Mike just covered, the mulch is great for regulating soil temperature and keeping the weeds out of the way. And also weeds drink your water. So if the weeds are drinking the water, the less water goes to your intended target once more. So that's just our last outdoor saving tips. To summarize the benefits of taking all these habits, first, it's going to lower your water bill, which is money directly into your pocket, and everyone appreciates a little extra cash, and especially in this area of modern inflation. Second, it decreases energy use. First, if you have like an automated energy system, that might increase your personal energy use. But remember, like water is treated with some regularity, and any action like that requires some energy investment. If not directly from your electric bill, then the Fairfax water spends that energy filtering out the water. So if you use less, they use less energy, which is great, which leads into conservation of natural resources and preservation of habitat. If you're using less water and they're using less energy, we are conserving energy and substances and resources as a society, which means they will last longer for any children or family members or just strangers who also deserve to have happy and productive lives. It reduces runoff for irrigation and water. That's us taking care of like the Chesapeake Bay. The Chesapeake Bay is gorgeous. I hope you've been out there recently. And we would like it to continue to be gorgeous. And it can't be gorgeous if we fill it full of runoff and nitrates that cause algae blooms and other sort of pollutants. Reducing runoff is a net positive. Lastly, you just reduce your own labor is nice. You don't have to be out there watering it 3 times a day. That's more time. Like Mike was saying, he likes having his own personal time, and on the weekends he doesn't want to spend the entire day taking care of his lawn. He wants it to look good, but you know, there's a limit. If you're not out there doing it all the time and you're not spending money replacing things, reseeding things, buying more mulch, or getting it free, this is just a net positive. You can invest that time and energy into doing something else. I believe now we enter our question and answer period. If you put a question in the chat somewhere.
Correct. So now we're moving on to the question and answer segment of tonight's event. However, at the moment, it looks like we don't have any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to our next slide to talk about some of our upcoming events. If you have thought of a question over the course of the presentation, go ahead and pop it into that question and answer portal, and I will come back to it. And if not, we will take it as a sign that we covered a lot of interesting content and you're still trying to process most of it, and you might not have questions at this very moment. So moving on to some of our upcoming events. So as a quick reminder, the HomeWise program will be a part of several upcoming in-person events. The next in-person event we will be attending is Supervisor Stork's Environment Expo. This event is actually taking place this Saturday, April 23rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and it will be taking place at Fort Hunt Park in Alexandria. And then on May 7th, we will be a part of the Spring Festival, which is being hosted by the Reston Association. This event will be taking place from 1 to 5 p.m. at the Walker Nature Center. For more information on either of these events, you can visit our website, www.fairfaxcounty.gov/environment-energy-coordination/HomeWise, or you can send us an email, and I'll display our email address on the next slide. So At the moment, it appears we still don't have any questions, which again, we will take as a sign that we covered some really good content. So we appreciate you joining us. If you think of any additional questions or you have any additional thoughts you want to share with us, please feel free to email that email address on your screen, homewise@fairfaxcounty.gov. We will make sure that you get a reply to any questions you send to us. In addition, this recording will be posted on YouTube and a link will be posted on the event page on our website. So you will be able to go back and access the recording again in the future. So we thank you for joining us and we hope everyone has a great rest of their night.